Hey, this is Matt with Alpha Analyst. In this video, we're going to cover recent real estate trends in Vancouver, Canada, including how house prices are so high there right now that sometimes it's difficult to distinguish between houses in Vancouver that have sold for more than $1 million and legitimate crack shacks. So here's a picture of Vancouver, and you can see the beautiful skyline. However, house prices there have recently reached the stratosphere. And you can see in this graph right here what's happened. So this is the price index for Vancouver for detached housing between 2005 and 2017. And you can see that the index has more than doubled over the last decade. So let's talk about this. Why have house prices gone up so high in Vancouver? So one factor that people point to is foreign buyers of real estate. So this would be people from outside of Vancouver that are coming in to buy real estate in Vancouver for investment or even for second houses. Another factor is shadow flipping or assignment sales. So what is this? This entails a situation where the buyer actually agrees to sell the property to somebody else before they've even purchased it themselves. And another factor that's pretty important is the limited construction of new real estate. And this is happening for a few reasons. One reason is that a good portion of the city is set aside for agricultural use, where you can't really build housing. Another factor is the difficulty in obtaining permits to be able to build that new housing. And a third factor, which is very significant, is that there's a large amount of water that's surrounding Vancouver, which puts a significant limit on the amount of new houses that can be built in the area. And you can see right here, just like San Francisco, there's quite a large amount of water around the city, which limits the amount of new housing that can be produced. So this is a website called crackshack.com. And what the website does is it shows you a certain house, and the house is falling into one of two categories. It's either a house that's determined to be a crack shack where people previously sold crack out of that house, or it's a quote unquote mansion that sold for more than $1 million in Vancouver. And here's a good example of what's on the site. So this house over here on the left looks relatively small, and it kind of looks like a shack compared to the one on the right. However, in reality, the house on the left was sold for over $1 million in Vancouver, and the house on the right was actually a crack shack. It was a house where people had previously sold crack out of it. So what is being done to combat the high house prices in Vancouver? So the Canadian government has implemented some new regulations that could slow down the house price appreciation in Vancouver. Here are some examples. One of them is that there has been an increase in the down payment up to 10% for the portion above $500,000. So if you're buying a relatively expensive house that's above $500,000, you need to have a 10% down payment for that portion as compared to just 5%. Another factor is that they've expanded the stress test to all mortgages when the borrower does not put down 20%. And a third item is that they are eliminating a loophole that previously allowed a lot of foreign buyers to be able to avoid capital gains taxes on their Vancouver real estate. So the website Hedge recently came out with an article on how Canadians are bracing for a perfect storm in their housing market. And here are some interesting things that they pointed out. The Canadian banking regulator, the OSFI, is currently proposing that anyone who gets a mortgage at a bank be able to afford a rate that's at least 200 basis points or 2% higher than their actual rate. And this is pretty significant. So this right here is showing what has happened to mortgage rates in Canada over the last decade. And you can see that rates went from approximately 7 to 8% all the way down to the current levels around 4.5% to 5%. So that means that in the stress test that's being proposed, that means that people would have to have the ability to pay the mortgage even if the interest rate were not 4.5%, but basically 6.5% or a little bit higher. So that could have a pretty significant impact on someone's ability to get a new mortgage. And if you have a slowdown in the number of new people that are getting mortgages to be able to buy housing in Canada, including Vancouver, that could result in a reduction in demand. And I think we're all familiar with supply and demand. If demand goes down, then you could have a reduction in prices, assuming that supply stays relatively constant. And the Hedge article also points out how the United States recently had a housing bubble, and Canada could be experiencing something similar. So hopefully house prices don't go down quite as much in Canada, but I thought that was pretty interesting.
If you like this video, I think you would love the Financial Analysis Kit. It contains a video that goes over our top 10 favorite tricks in Microsoft Excel. It also contains 3 graphs in Excel that you can download, and it also has videos that go over how you can customize these graphs to meet your own personal needs. And finally, the kit contains a report on the one word that you can tell your boss that can supercharge your career. So how can you obtain your kit? Just go to aanalyst.com/kit, and you can type in your email address and access the kit and start using it today.